Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Inshallah, we'll go back to reading in Sahih Muslim. And last time we had stopped at the hadith number 131. And we go on to hadith 132. All this is still in the chapter of Iman. Kitab al-Iman. The kitab, the book or the chapter that talks about what relates to belief. And the kitab is divided into some other subtitles below that, and those are called abwab. Bab means bab just means door in Arabic. So normally this is how they divide books of hadith. The kitab, then comes bab. Then if they want to make another subcategory, they say fasl. It's like paragraph. Okay. So this part that he will talk about, this next bab, this next subtitle, will include باب بيان نقصان الإيمان بنقص الطاعات وبيان إطلاق لفظ الكفر على غير الكفر بالله تعالى ككفر النعمة والحقوق. This is a very important concept. He says here that this part will be talking about the fact that Iman and belief would decline and diminish with the decline of acts of worship and with the decline in good deeds. And this is something that all believers can feel from themselves. When they are engaged more in good deeds, the level of Iman and closeness to Allah, it becomes more appreciable and stronger in their hearts. And of course, with less acts of worship and less good deeds, the Iman diminishes, and of course with sins it diminishes even more and gets really affected. And then he says also that this part will be talking about the fact that in the texts of hadith you can find that the title of kufr, kafara, or he has committed kufr, can be used to indicate other than the actual rejection of Allah. And this is very, very important to notice that, because some people will see a hadith that talks about, in which the Prophet ﷺ says that whoever commits this act, qad kafar, he has committed kufr. And they would think that this person is no longer a Muslim. But this is not the fact. We have many hadiths that show that. This is one of them, the one that's coming will show that. Such as سباب المسلم فسوق وقتاله كفر. There's a hadith that says that. It says to curse a Muslim, this is an evil deed, and to actually physically fight between Muslims, especially if this fight includes weapons, this is they have committed kufr. And also the hadith لا ترجعوا بعدي كفارا يضرب بعضكم رقاب بعض. Do not become kuffar, actual kuffar. You can understand it that it means rejection of belief, but this is not the fact. He says كفارا يضرب بعضكم رقاب بعض, fighting each other with the swords. He called who does that would be a kafir, and collectively they are kuffar. But none of these ahadith actually mean the kufr, which means apostasy from Islam. None of these ahadith indicate apostasy from Islam, and this we know. How do we know that? How do we know that this labeling of kufr, qad kafar wa qitaluhu kufr, kuffaran yadribu ba'dukum riqaba ba'd? How do we know that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not mean the real kufr, which is to depart from Islam completely? How do we know that? How do we know that he doesn't mean
that was involved?
The activity is not a real kufr, but that's not up to us. But it's not up to us to say if this activity is kufr or not. It is actually the Sharia itself or the Messenger himself who can label this as kufr or not kufr. How do we know that he didn't mean the real kufr here? We mentioned that before. Does anybody know the answer to this? How do we know that this is not real kufr? Because we know from other texts in which people who committed these acts are labeled as believers. In the Quran itself, وَإِن طَائِفَتَانِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ اقْتَتَلُوا فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمْ, in Surah Al-Hujurat, right? if two groups of mu'mineen, believers, fight against each other, اقتتلوا فأصلحوا بينهما. إنما المؤمنون إخوة فأصلحوا بين أخويكم. In the same chapter. So he called them believers and he called them brothers in belief, despite the fact that they are actually fighting each other and actually fighting with swords, like where somebody can kill the other one. So we know that they are not kuffar because the Quran said so. You follow? And this would lead us to have to understand the labeling of them as kuffar or وَقِتَالُهُ كُفْرٌ كُفَّارًا يَضْرِبُ بَعْضُكُمْ رِقَابَ بَعْضٍ does not mean the real kufr. Okay? This is an example. This hadith that we're going to read right now is another example of this. This hadith reads as follows. It's عن عبد الله بن عمر عن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال يا معشر النساء تصدقنا وأكثرنا الاستغفار فإني رأيتكن أكثر أهل النار فقالت امرأة منهن جزلة وما لنا يا رسول الله أكثر أهل النار قالت تكثرن اللعنة وتكفرن العشير ما رأيت من ناقصات عقل ودين أغلب لذي لب منكن قالت يا رسول الله وما نقصان العقل والدين قال أما نقصان العقل فشهادة امرأتين تعدل شهادة رجل فهذا نقصان العقل وتمكث الليالي ما تصلي وتفطر في رمضان فهذا نقصان الدين. This hadith I will translate. Abdullah ibn Umar says, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, he was giving a sermon and an advice to a group of women, and he said to them, Ya ma'ashar nisa, O women. He was talking to these women, he was admonishing, tasaddaqna wa akthirna al-istighfar. Do give out charity, sadaqah, more than the zakah, more than obligatory charity. Wa akthirna al-istighfar, and make lots of istighfar, ask Allah for forgiveness. فإني رأيتكن أكثر أهل النار. As I saw that in the hellfire there are more women than men. رأيتكن أكثر أهل النار. Now, these are facts. We are not really saying this because we are men here. Okay. The Messenger told us certain facts. He says, I saw this with my own eyes. How did he see with his own eyes who is in the fire of hell? How did he see that? Answer. How do we see? What's the answer to this question? How did he? Huh? Yes, exactly. This is one explanation. Some scholars said that when he went for Mi'raj, and he actually saw people of the fire of hell, he saw that women were more. And also, one time when he was doing al-kusuf, the eclipse of the sun, and during the salah, he says, عُرِضَتْ عَلَيَّ الْجَنَّةُ وَالنَّارُ. He says, Allah showed me during this salah the fire of hell and paradise, the heaven. And then he actually mentioned that too. He says, فَرَأَيْتُ أَكْثَرَ أَهْلِهَا النِّسَاء. And I saw that there were more women than men in the fire of hell. Okay? So nobody say Islam is against women, guys. These are just facts, okay? Maybe I shouldn't record this video.
You get in trouble.
So he said. So here he told them that, and he told them that to try to avert and guard ourselves from going to fire of hell. One of the two stronger things to protect the person from going to the fire of hell if he is committing sins is asking for forgiveness and giving sadaqat. Okay, there's the sadaqatu tudfi'u ghadab al-rabb kama yudfi'u al-ma'u an-nar. The sadaqah, charity, it extinguishes Allah's wrath and anger, and this is just a parable, of course, just like the water would extinguish his fire. Also the hadith, فَاتَّقُوا النَّارَ وَلَوْ بِشِقِّ تَمْرَةٍ. Protect yourself from the fire of hell, even if you with the charity with a half a date. So these hadith indicate that charity is a very strong deed in protecting from the fire of hell and protecting from sins, because another hadith says, الصدقة تطفئ الخطيئة كما يطفئ الماء النار. The sadaqah, charity, extinguishes sin. If somebody cannot get rid of a certain sin, to help, he should try to make lots of sadaqah along with istighfar, along with trying as hard as he can to get over this, and that works really, really strongly. One woman, فقالت امرأة منهن جزلة. One of those women, جزلة means she was fluent, she was wise. This woman asked him, and she was brave as well. جزلة. She says, why are we more than men in the fire of hell? He says, because تكثرن اللعنة وتكفرن العشير. Because, and this was a habit, especially amongst Arab women at the time. So he was talking to them because of what the sins he saw in the women more than the men at the time, that frequently they would use the curse word. Actually, the Arabs frequently in that time used the curse word, even if they wanted to say something good about this, about somebody. For instance, they would say, "Ma ash'arahu la'anahu Allah," so, which means that if they hear a good poem, they say, "Oh, this is such a good poet that who said this poem." La'anahu Allah, may Allah curse him. It's just some. By the way, nowadays people do this. So many people, when they come and they want to say, they want to be friendly with each other, they call me. I don't. I'm in the masjid, but and they say these things like this, huh? And then you see some people, what's up? They say dog. Yeah, you hear that? You don't hear that between some people? No, you don't hear that. What's up? What's up, dog? You don't hear that? No, it's very common in the States at least.
Just not much.
تفضل. نعم. يعني he's asking how the sadaqah extinguishes Allah's wrath. This is هذا مثال it's الإنسان كما ورد في الحديث وأتبع السيئة الحسنة تمحوها. When we commit an evil deed, one of the ways to protect the person from the punishment of Allah and Allah's wrath is to do a good deed after. And so this is what the hadith is saying, وَأَتْبِعِ السَّيِّئَ الْحَسَنَةَ. If you do an evil deed, do a good deed after. And one of them is sadaqah. So sadaqah is very strong. مفهوم ولا ما مفهوم؟ مفهوم ولا مش مفهوم يا أخ محمد؟ مفهوم كده ولا مش مفهوم؟ يعني كعمل صالح، العمل الصالح بالضبط.
شخص الإنسان
صح.
يعني بتنفع له بس ما بعرف يعني أنا سألتك بس بدي
ما صح يعني هي بتطفئ غضب الرب عليه مش بصفة عامة. يعني هي بتطفئ غضب الرب عنه وترفع العقوبة عنه. So the sadaqah protects that person from the evil deeds and from the wrath of Allah Azza wa Jalla. Now, so I don't want to go for too long for this one. Anyhow, he told them that the problem that they do is lots of cursing and he says وَتَكْفُرْنَا. In some narrations he says you commit kufr. But in some narrations he says وَتَكْفُرْنَا الْعَشِيرِ. He explained it. That you reject and you are ungrateful towards your husbands. And he explained it in some other narrations. He says even if the husband is nice to you for a lifetime, then he does something that you dislike, you would say that I have never seen any goodness from you. So he explained that in some other narrations that will come with us. So basically here he called being ungrateful towards somebody who has been nice to you, he called it kufr. He called it kufr, okay? So that would apply to a man or a woman, but he says that he has noticed this in women, especially the women he lived with at the time, and the Arab women at the time, that he says they were committing these kind of sins more than others, more than the men. And then he mentioned something else about them. He says, also another thing that can lead for them to fall into Allah's wrath and the fire of hell is that they are a very strong reason for men to be tempted by them and distracted from good deeds, because of men are normally attracted to women, but also women can do certain things such as not observing hijab, for instance, to lead to more attraction and more men falling into sin. You follow? So he mentioned that here. أذهب لذي لب منكن. He says you can actually make a man lose his mind. Maybe by the way she talks, or by the way she dresses, or by the way she walks.
Will that be deliberate? Like
If it's
seducing men?
What?
Is it seducing?
Like seducing, yes. Like seducing men. And he says not only men who are not wise, but he says even the wise man can be seduced and can fall into sin because of what he sees from the women, especially if they seduce or attract him by their actions, or by the way they walk, or by the way they dress, or by the way they talk. You follow? So that's another reason he mentioned here. And when he described them, he says ناقصات عقل ودين. He says that you are lesser in deen and lesser in aql. Lesser in deen here means that your good deeds are less than the good deeds of the men. But this is not a sin, because they abstain from certain good deeds during the menstrual cycle, and that's this is by commandment from Allah. She wouldn't fast and she wouldn't pray during that time, and she would not make up for the salah. So she loses many salah during her lifetime compared to men. So that's why he said that he labeled them, or he called them naqisatu deen, that your deen means your good deeds are less than the good deeds of men. But this is not a sin in itself. But the other three things, which are rejection and showing ingratitude towards the husband, and also cursing, and also seducing men, these are the things that women would do and would result in sin, and would result in them being more in the fire of hell in numbers than the men. So this is the decline in their deen because of the lack of salah during the time of their menses. But also he says naqisatu aql. Aql means assertiveness here, especially, and he gave them an example that in testimony, especially in crimes, and also in monetary disputes, Islam requires the testimony of one man or two women. That is, scholars say this is because women are emotionally inclined. So if they know that this person might be punished like a capital punishment, for like death penalty or something, or may have a severe punishment, their emotions may overcome their assertiveness, and that would lead to them not making the right testimony just to save that person. What? And that's why it would require two women. Okay, not that aql here does not mean understanding, because we see that many women have better memory and better and higher intelligence than men. That can happen, and we see that all the time. But here aql means, because in Arabic aql actually means something to restrain, such as when you restrain an animal or something, you use the rope. You can call that aql. Aqilha wa tawakkal, right? Aqilha. So here means that their emotions would drive them to make the wrong judgment in court, for instance, especially when it comes to crimes or things like that. So this is the meaning here. But that's just a description. That's not a sin, of course. And also the fact that they miss lots of prayers is not a sin at all. But actually, a woman would commit a sin if she actually prayed during her menstrual period. If she actually insisted, I will go ahead and pray, that would be a sin. You follow? So some scholars said she would actually get rewarded to abstain when she abstains from the salah during that time. But this hadith shows that in general, that the more the good deeds, the more the deen would be. It also shows that if somebody doesn't understand something, even if they're talking to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they would ask the question and he would answer them regardless. Yeah. And even if the questions, she repeated more than one question, and he would still answer. Now, we would stop here. Yeah.